Okay, real quickly, I want to go over, since we're getting into macroeconomics, the difference between micro and macro, right? Our first unit was on basic concepts, opportunity cost, scarcity. We looked at production possibilities curve. We looked at different types of businesses, proprietorships, partnerships, corporations. And in micro, we looked at a lot with supply and demand, essentially a study of individual economic behavior or market behavior. So we look at individual supply and demand curves. We look at market supply and demand curves. We look at marginal cost, marginal benefit, which is stuff you really didn't get into too much. It'll be more towards AP. We talked about it a little bit. Surplus and shortages. These are, on the individual market basis, more microeconomic concepts. We're going to be getting into, if we ever come back from snow, or for those of you looking at now, what we're getting into with macro is the study of like national economic behavior. How do national wages, unemployment, GDP, inflation, aggregate supply and demand analysis, money and banking, fiscal policy, monetary policy, trade. These are all things that are macro because they are larger in scope. Right, we're looking at these from a broad perspective. With microecon, we're looking at economic behavior on a more individual market basis, where in macro we're looking at a study of broad economic concepts as they relate to us as a nation, and what our government or banks or outside influences can do to affect our broad economic policy. If you read the newspaper and they talk about economics or trade or whatever, they're usually talking about macroeconomics. Rarely in the newspaper you see, or at least in most national newspapers, we see a lot of micro stuff dealt with. Mostly these are macro concepts. So that's the difference. And I'll be getting some graphs and some curves and stuff for us to look at. For micro, essentially, you make sure you know your production possibilities curve. Do you know your supply and demand really well? Do you know how to what creates shortages? What creates surplus? What changes demand? What changes quantity demanded? What changes supply? What changes quantity supplied? What are the different types of market structures? We have. When we get into this, we'll have perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly, and how do those affect demand curves, supply curves, and markets. So that would be micro, and we're getting into macro. So those are the differences.